My school is full of monsters. Written by Matuteharcos. I always feared the unknown, which led me to carrying a pocket knife with me at all times, even to school. You could say that I'm paranoid to the extreme. Until today, I didn't know that living in constant terror is way better than facing the horrors of your fears. It's different to think that there is something out there that may get you than knowing full well that there certainly is something that will try to get you. My name is Josh. I'm a 9th grader, so this is my first year in high school. The school itself is a large building built next to a power plant, but only around 100 people come to this school. So empty hallways are a common thing here, even at recess. And most classrooms aren't even used. It always feels eerie to enter this school because of this. And the occasional scratching I hear. There always being different parts of the hallway being closed off, and the rumors of disappearing children, well, they didn't help my paranoia. But the cherry on top was the distorted figures I always saw crawling around the closed off sections. Well, I say distorted because they were practically invisible. But if you looked hard enough, you could make out them being there like they were made out of very clear glass. The first time I spoke about my discovery, everybody called me crazy while the teachers just shook their heads and told me no such thing exists, that the place is just under repairs. But I've never seen a soul there when closed off. I wanted to enter it one time to go to history class, but I was stopped and told that entering a closed hallway section is prohibited. And if this rule were to be violated, it would bring immediate expulsion. So everyone had to work around it every time they came across a closed off section. Today was different. I had a math exam in room 313. And I was already late, so getting off at my bus stop, I just sprinted to school, hoping I would be able to climb to the 3rd floor in time. I was just about to turn the next corner and sprint to the end of hallway Y, but the barricade indicating that the section was closed off stopped me. I was thinking fast. Room 313 was on hallway Y, but it was closed. And the only way I would be getting into that classroom is through the windows outside. If only I wasn't on the 3rd floor, maybe that would have worked. I wanted to call one of my classmates who, despite me being labeled the weird kid, still made friends with me. But the test had already started, and they have to give their phones to the teacher. So my only option is, well, I stepped closer to the barricade. It was the first time that I was this close, and the scratching noises became way louder. The things crawling on the ground, they looked arachnid from this close, but the size of a Mops breed dog. I had second thoughts about this. What if I wasn't just imagining these things? And what about the rule? I looked around, but I didn't see anyone as expected. I wondered how would the teachers know if someone broke the rules if no one was around. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Are you wondering who's watching? A chill ran down my spine. I turned around and saw a tall man smiling down at me, with his red color hair making me gulp inaudibly. I have a class right over there right now. I stuttered. It's okay. I came here to fix things. I will accompany you to your classroom. Just stay close. I just nodded and started following him. I crossed the barrier, and that's when it happened. It was too fast for me to realize, but the invisible things became more visible. As I feared, they were giant spiders, but with eyes all over their bodies. And it looked like there were hundreds of legs or more. The scratching clearly came from them, It was so loud that it sounded like chewing instead. While shaking, I started following the man who was already at the classroom door. I tried not to give much attention to the spiders as they crawled on the floors and walls. Some even crawled up on the guy, which almost made me vomit. I wanted to turn around and just run home. I kept trying to convince myself that all of this was just in my head. This can't be normal. This can't be real. What seemed like an eternity only took about 30 seconds at most. But I was there at the door, reaching for the doorknob. I was startled as the man spoke. "Aren't you afraid?" I stopped for a moment. I felt him towering above me, but I did not look. I did not care. I just opened the door, slowly hoping I can get away from this dude. Even my math teacher lecturing me is better than this. I didn't realize it before, but as I was opening the door, I looked at the number 312. It was already too late. I saw it. I saw the spider monsters were in the middle of devouring someone on the teacher's desk. I don't know who it was. I didn't look. I couldn't. But still, the images as the spiders ripped the meat off the individual engraved themselves into my memory. I wanted to vomit, but the shock didn't let me move a muscle. "Oh my, it seems you have seen it. Or should I say, I made you see it," said the weird man with a giggle. "You see, my children didn't have food for a good while. But now 2 of you entered our trap." I looked at him. He had a very wide, sinister-looking grin. I needed to get away from here, fast. I glanced to the side. I had 2 options: run for the barricade, or run to hallway Z, and from there to the rooftop. I didn't have much time to decide. "Don't try anything bold, boy. Let's make it quick and painless." He placed his arm on my shoulder, and suddenly all the monsters around me came to a halt. "It's dinner time," he said as they moved. I didn't need anything else but to hear the synchronized scratching sound they made to make my paralyzed body move again. I started to run, but the man grabbed my school bag. So, struggling a little bit, I dropped it and I ran for hallway Z without looking back. I reached the roof and tried to barricade the door behind me with some planks that were lying around. I heard them from the other side, but after a while they stopped trying to come out and they just stayed there scratching. I caught my breath and collapsed to the ground. Those few minutes proved to me that I didn't just imagine these things. There was no way. It seemed too real, which just made me more freaked out. It got quiet, too quiet. I didn't like that, so I reached into my pocket to grab my knife. I wasn't trying to play hero, but I didn't want to go down without a fight if it came to that. I was watching the door, waiting for it to burst open, for them to swarm out as the man walks among them. But it didn't happen. "You didn't think we would find another way up, did you?" I was shocked to such an extent that I thought my eyeballs would pop out from their sockets. I turned around to see the man climbing up from the side with giant spider legs growing out from his back. He then retracted those to stand on his legs. I kept my right hand with the knife behind my back for a surprise if he got closer. "I got careless, but this is the end. For you, at least. There are a lot of us, and we need the food." As he said that, he held up his hands, and around us spiders appeared with their scratching noises. But the most I saw were behind him on the power plant's wall facing the school. I was sweating. I was crying too. In a mere hour, I felt like I had aged a few years from this stress. I wanted to close the gap between us to at least strike him a few times before I perished. A bluff. I swallowed hard, and I raised my left hand and slowly pointed at him. You should do it."
"Ha, that's more like it. It's clever of you to know when to give up. I will gladly accept your request."
He walked towards me. I only had one chance to strike. Whatever he was, I hoped at least I could permanently damage him, so his next victim has higher chances. I was tired. I had given up on the thought of surviving this already. These horrors, I was just food for them, nothing else. But I didn't want to die without an impact. He got closer. And just a few steps away he was. Everything felt slow. Even the scratching stopped. He was a step away from me when he started raising his hand to get me. It was a now or never situation. I held my knife in front of me and I jumped at him. I must have taken him by surprise because he seemed really shocked when I plunged my knife into where I thought his heart was. His blood was green as it poured out from him. I stepped back and I felt all my strength leaving my body as I collapsed to the ground. The next moment, he screamed and the monsters did the same. It was ear-splitting, so I covered my ears, but it didn't help anything.
"You don't know what you've done, boy,"
the man screamed as he collapsed to the ground and stopped moving. As this happened, the monsters started moving. I didn't want to die, but I was severely outnumbered. Like I said, I was ready for my final moments, but that never came. The monsters went past me, past the man's corpse, and retreated, it seemed. They were retreating to the power plant, and as a big clump of black mass, they disappeared into it. I sat there for hours, just watching the man's corpse. I was thinking maybe this was all in my mind after all, that the body would just disappear if I looked away, and that I would wake up in my bed again. But whenever I looked to the side and back, his corpse was still there. Home. I wanted to go home and forget all of this. I stood up and I went for the entrance, giving one last look to the man's remains and then going inside. Inside, the barricade was gone. I picked up my backpack from room 312. Hesitantly, I decided to look into the room. The corpse was gone too. These things started convincing me that I had just imagined all of this. I didn't care about my remaining classes, so I just started walking home. I can miss a whole Friday. I'll just visit the doctors if needed. On the way home, as I was passing the power plant, I heard clinking sounds from behind me. I turned around and looked down. It was my knife. I started panicking. I looked up and I saw the man on the very top of the power plant, looking down on me with his sinister smile. He said something, but he was too far away from me to hear it. I just grabbed my knife and bolted home. And here I am now, writing this. As of now, nothing bad happened, but I occasionally hear scratching noises. I'm going insane. I need to switch schools. The scratching is getting louder. I am not waiting for Monday.